Okay, so for everyone, this is Finance Meets Real Estate. We have an amazing guest here today. It's Josh Ferrari. He's a young real estate investor and syndicator, right? Who has done already quite impressive things in the field. He is the founder of Ferrari Capital. He's also the host of, and co-founder as well of Tree Beach Capital. He was born in Omaha, Nebraska, and he moved throughout the Southeast during his childhood. He graduated from Tennessee College of Applied Technology, and he's also an aircraft technician. He's been in the aviation industry for over 5 years. And for, about 4 years, he has been in real estate and has accumulated over 35 million in assets under management, 437 units. I'm sure some of these numbers change to an extent. And he's a host of the Creative Capital podcast, which now has over 150,000 downloads with thousands of loyal weekly listeners. Today, we're going to talk about raising $6 million in 30 days. It's a real pleasure to have Josh here. And if you guys have any questions, feel free to put them on the chat, or you can speak up as well. And we're going to have a bigger kind of like more question session at the end. And but feel free to speak as well. We're doing an open format. There's no PowerPoint. It's pretty much a discussion. Like we're having Josh here share his investor experiences with us and his capital raising experience with us. So with that, I'm going to pass it on to Josh, and I'm going to have some questions on my end. And like I said, you guys feel free to ask also. Thank you, Josh.
What's up, everybody? Now everyone really knows, I guess, my life story all the way down to where I was born in Omaha, Nebraska. But so I got started in this business. I moved from Memphis, Tennessee to Mobile, Alabama to start what I thought was going to be a long-standing career as an aircraft technician. I'd gone to Tennessee College of Applied Technology up in Tennessee, graduated, came down here, was down here for about 6 months, had just got married, was just moved out of my parents' house 6 months prior, was all excited to just be living this new life. Then my dad calls me up one day in January of 2018, and he says, "Hey, son, I got something to tell you." I'm like, okay, you're making it sound like it's about to be horrible news. He says, "Your mom and I are about to start investing in flips. We're about to basically start flipping houses." And I was like, well, that's very intriguing. Like, you guys aren't independently wealthy. You know, you've never been interested in real estate before. Where's all this coming from? It ended up being about a 4-hour-long conversation. At the end of it, I was extremely intrigued in real estate investing. So of course, he sent me over Rich Dad, Poor Dad, told me I had to read that. Then I read Cash Flow Quadrant, proceeded to read 38 more books that first year, listened to all the podcasts I could get a hold of, went to 3 different local real estate investor meetups, and jumped right into wholesaling. Tried my hand at wholesaling for about 6 months, probably spent about $5,000 on marketing throughout that time frame. Didn't really work out for us. We didn't close a single deal. I realized quickly that wasn't really the path we wanted to go, because we wanted the benefits of actually owning real estate more so than just wholesaling deals. So even though it didn't work, sure, we could have kept going for it, could have kept going after the wholesaling thing, but decided to pivot. So we pivoted to buying a fourplex. That was our first ever actual investment that we bought.
Wait, if I may interject, sorry. So, and which year is that? Is that 2017, 18, or
this was August of 2018. We bought a fourplex.
Cool.
It's August of 2018. Buy this fourplex, and I didn't even have the money. I was 21 years old at the time when I got started investing in real estate. Didn't have any money, no finance background, just dirt broke. And buying the fourplex was a behemoth of an opportunity, of a purchase, of an undertaking, of everything. So I actually had to get my dad to help me out with the down payment. You could say that was my beginning to raising capital, but not really, because he didn't get any kind of like equity or anything. He was just helping his son out. So bought the deal, and then it ended up turning into, I mean, a living nightmare. That deal, anything that could have gone wrong went wrong on that deal. We're not really here to talk about that deal in particular. I've talked about it a ton on my own personal show, but I ended up losing $60,000 on that deal when it was all said and done about 2 years later. Now, throughout this time frame of all this transpiring over between 6 months to a year of getting into this, I was realizing that house hacking wasn't something that we wanted to do. Dealing with our own contractors wasn't something we wanted to do. Freaking everything we were doing, managing our own properties, we didn't want to do any of that. So I had to quickly realize, okay, how am I going to pivot? What am I going to do that is going to allow me to still be able to be in this business? Because I didn't have any money. All my money was dumped into this deal that was just losing money. So what am I going to do? Well, I ended up reading Joe Fairless's book, actually, the big red one. It's like best ever apartment syndication advice. This was back in 2019. And I was quickly hooked on this concept of multifamily syndication. Of course, I still didn't really know much of anything other than what was in the book. I really didn't know how I was actually going to go about accomplishing anything. But I loved the concept of the scalability. I loved the finance piece of it all. I love being able to partner with other passive investors and provide them opportunities. I love being able to educate other people once I actually got to the point of learning how to do all this stuff. I just loved everything about the multifamily syndication. So I went, probably about 2 months later, after I read this book, I went to one of the local real estate meetups, and there was a guest speaker coming to talk about multifamily syndication. I'm like, perfect. This is exactly what I need to go to. So I go, the meetup ends, and I remember once it ended, I was just solidified right then and there that that was 100% what I wanted to do. Now, when it ended, there was nobody else in the audience that was interested in multifamily syndication, because I had seen all of those same people in the audience month in and month out at this meetup, and I knew that they were all interested in different things. So I'm like, well, I don't want to just get all hyped up from this guy talking about it and then leave and not really get anything out of it. So I mustered up the gumption and the courage to go and talk to the speaker. Found out we actually both had aviation in common. He was a naval helicopter pilot, and that was kind of how we clicked. He let me take him out to lunch that following week, and he became somewhat of a mentor from then on. So now I have a mentor in the space. This is roughly about 3 years ago. Then fast forward to today. You heard a little bit of my story. We now have $35.5 million assets under management, 437 units. I have 2 business partners. We're based down here in the Gulf Coast, Southern Alabama and Northern Florida. And all of these actual deals that we closed transpired over the last 14 months. So yes, I've been investing in real estate for 4 years, and I've been in multifamily for about 3, but we only really started closing deals for the last 14 months. So we've really seen a lot of growth here recently. And you could say that a lot of this came from my ability to raise capital, which is probably where you guys are all here today. $6 million in 30 days. How did it happen? So I guess backing up a little bit, back in July of 2020, before we had ever actually closed a deal, I had been trying, been analyzing deals, and I had one business partner at the time. And I mean, we were submitting LOIs left and right. Nobody was accepting anything. Brokers weren't taking me seriously. I hadn't ever raised any money before. So I'm like, man, I just don't even know how I'm going to break into this business. And it was kind of discouraging because I had lost so much money on the fourplex, and then I had been trying to do the multifamily thing for 2 years, and like it seemed like no traction was happening. Well, I saw on social media that there was this challenge happening. It was like the 30-day to 500K challenge. You guys might have heard of it. A guy named Bill Allen created it. And so I said, okay, let me see what this challenge is about. It was $100 to get in the challenge. And I'm like, man, $100. If I lose $100, whatever, maybe I'll learn something over the course of the next 30 days, something he has to say. And the whole concept of it was that he was going to not only teach you how to be able to raise $500,000 in a 30-day time frame, but also it was like a challenge to actually do it. So you're going to be learning and trying to accomplish it at the same time. So the very first video comes on, get an email for day one. And he says, okay, you're going to go live on social media once a day for the next 30 days. I'm like, oh, great. I absolutely hated social media up until that point. I had a Facebook. I had I had a Facebook and Instagram and a LinkedIn. I never got on LinkedIn, never got on Instagram, and I barely got on Facebook. So I really didn't have much of a following, unless except like old high school and college buddies and church friends and just long old people that I wasn't really connected with on a daily basis or even a weekly basis or a monthly basis. And so when he said that, I'm like, well, I don't really feel like I'm going to be able to raise any money if I do this. But at the very least, if this is what he's saying I need to do, I need to do it. So I remember doing that first live video. Actually, I had to Google how to do a Facebook live video because I had never done one before and I didn't know where the button was. So I finally figured out how to do a Facebook live. I do that first live. I was nervous as all get out, like, oh gosh, I don't even know what I'm going to talk about. Like, here's me trying to do this challenge. I've never raised money before, but we're going to kind of go along in my journey throughout this next couple of, this month. And basically that was it. And then I hung up, ended the live and went on about my day. So then as we continue to progress throughout the 30 days and every day he's sending me something new, there was some serious like knowledge bombs being dropped in this particular challenge. And every day it was like, okay, I need to do what he's saying, because this guy had raised tens of millions of dollars over the course of his couple of year journey in the business. So I knew he knew what he was talking about. So it took about 6, 7, 8 days of doing these live videos before folks actually started to pay attention to me. And what I mean by that is they actually started to start commenting on the post. I started getting DMs like, hey, I've been watching your videos the last couple of days. Tell me more about this real estate thing. Like, I had people reach out to me and they were like, dude, I didn't even know you were in aviation. Like, I just remember you from high school and I don't know what happened to you after then, but find out that you're in aviation and now you're in real estate and now you're trying to raise money. Like, there were so many people that really just didn't know the concept of who I was. And so that day one, the whole concept of doing the lives was that you're kind of unveiling your secret identity and letting people know who you are and what you do on a more global scale, as opposed to just your inner circle. And so when I started getting this feedback, we started having these phone calls, and I started making the calls because I feel like this has always been a little bit of me, but I started making the calls a lot more about the individual and a lot less about the investment opportunity. So when someone would call me and they want to schedule a call or whatever, I would just talk to them about their personal life. I would talk to them about their hobbies, their spouse, their kids. Tell me about your goals. How long have you been investing? Have you been investing at all? Tell me about what you're looking to achieve. Do you want something with more cash flow? Do you want something with more equity? Do you want this? Do you want that? And I was able to then kind of take that and have kind of basically while we're having the phone call, I'm taking a bunch of notes. As I'm taking all these notes about what things that they're saying, goals that they have, and I'm creating all these different lists of investors interested in specific things. And I was able to use that to then, when we actually had an investment opportunity in the future, I was able to contact those specific individuals interested in that specific asset class, unit count, deal, all those things, able to contact them immediately. Now, however, some of these calls, we never actually even talked about investing. It was almost like I was just catching up with an old buddy, even if I hadn't ever talked to this person before. We were just chatting about life and getting to connect with them on an emotional level. There's actually a study that came out after diving deeper into this challenge. I really wanted to do some more research and just learn some more about how to even like talk to people and figure out what this whole kind of like salesy thing is about, even though it wasn't really sales. And there was a study that came out that said that 95% of people, not just Americans or Indians or Asians, like 95% of humans buy on emotion and justify with logic later. So if you think about 95% of the population is making these decisions on an emotional level, you think about what not to say at that point. Basically, over the course of those 30 days from those videos that I was making, I probably only talked specifically about real estate and investing 6 or 7 of the days. The other 23 days was all about me, what was happening. I mean, we went through like a drive-through COVID thing because it was in 2020, and like, hey, we're at the drive-through COVID and they're about to shove something up my nose, roll the window down, and this is what's happening. And like, that was literally it. Another time we were in the second Another video, we were in the second story, living in our fourplex. It was over a 100-year-old house. AC's busted. And I'm doing a video on how the AC's busted. I'm dripping in sweat in a tank top on the couch. The dog's panting on the hardwood floor. My wife's got the ice pack of peas on the neck. And it's just like, hey, this is just us. This is what's happening. It's blazing hot. I don't know if you guys can relate. But it was almost just that. It was kind of like your own personal reality show where folks are starting to relate to you, figure out who you are, what you're about, what you're doing, connecting with you on that emotional level. And then once they do that, they start to want to learn more about you and learn more about your business and learn more about what it is that you're doing. And then that kind of led to the conversations of actually raising the capital. Now, the actual capital raising itself, I probably raised about $1 million between 20 to 25 people that were already kind of in my inner circle, folks that had already been friends with me on Facebook, because I chose to do Facebook Lives. I could have done the lives on any social media platform. And then on top of that, how I took 1 million and made it 6 million over the course of the 30 days is every time I had a conversation with someone, regardless of if they said yes or no, or like if they're interested in investing or not, I would always ask for a referral. Like, hey, do you think you might know someone else that might be interested in an investment opportunity like this? And you'd be surprised how many people are know someone or are excited and open to telling you about this other person that they know. Like, now that you mention it, Uncle Sam from way back when 2 years ago was talking about in Christmas that he had $50,000 or something. And I'm not sure what he ended up doing with that, but you can give him a shout here. And then on top of that, not only would I ask for the referral, but I would ask to get some kind of a warm introduction. I don't want them to just give me their phone number or their email and I reach out to them out of the blue and say, hey, so-and-so told me you had money and you're looking to give to me. That it didn't work. So it was much better if I could actually have that individual either get on the call with us, so it's like a three-way call, or introduce me via email and some kind of mass email, or we're all on a text, or we're all on a Zoom call, or whatever it is, some kind of warm introduction where that person knows the other person that is actually connecting me to them. And then from there, we would kind of take it from there. That person would either stay on the call or they would jump off. But those warm referrals was how I took 1 million to 6 million. And one of the referrals in particular was literally $3 million. I had a call with a guy. He was an old, he used to be an inspector, a home inspector. And he had since gotten out of that business and was trying to just basically do some more passive investing. And so that's what he saw my videos and wanted to reach out, and told me he had about $50,000. He was looking to put in something, just kind of wanted to test the waters. And we had a great conversation, connected with him emotionally, and then learned more about him and his goals. And then at the end of it, I asked the referral question, and he said, you know what, actually, I've got a guy that I used to do business with. He works in the oil and gas industry. He lives at XY, he lives at this particular state. And I think he's doing some investing himself. And so I would love to connect you with him. Maybe he'd be interested in investing in something like you're doing. Like, perfect. That'd be great. So he introduces us via email. We were all three in an email. I scheduled a call with the guy, have a phone call with him. The phone call lasted all of like 30 minutes. And at the end of the 30 minutes, the dude was like, yeah, I got $3 million. I'm looking to put into something. If you've got something that matches this particular criteria we've just discussed over this phone call, I'd be more than happy to take a look, and I'd be more than happy to potentially invest with you. Yeah, I like who you are. I like what you're about. I like that you know so-and-so. He's been a great friend over the last, couple of years or whatever. And I was just like, holy smokes. I didn't even know that people out there had $3 million just liquid, ready to just dump into something. At that point, I couldn't even fathom it. And so just that one question about that referral is what differentiated me from raising, say, $3 million to $6 million. So you'd be surprised how many people are actually open and willing and or know someone who has money. Because when I got, again, I thought I didn't have like anyone that I knew that had any money when I started this. And a lot of people think that they can't raise money because they don't have an inner circle. They don't come from a lot of money. Their family's not wealthy, this, that, and the other. And you'll be surprised how quickly you can actually kind of use and continue to grow your inner circle from other people's inner circles by having these conversations and asking for these referrals. So then after that, this $6 million was all soft commits. And so then we proceeded, and again, this is in July 2020. Then the first actual deal we got under contract was in September of 2020. We ended up closing that deal late December of 2020, and we needed about $650,000 to raise for that one. And we were able to raise for that one, obviously no problem with all the soft commits I was able to get. And so that was actually the first time I had ever raised capital, was this little challenge here that I paid $100 for, and just blew my expectations out of the water. And since then, I kind of have transformed from what I thought I was going to be, of the more analytical individual, to now the more people oriented person, where investor relations, raising capital, because it's always what I've liked, but I just never thought I would be able to raise capital until I did that challenge.
And just as a question, George, so the challenge, so what was your template deal? Let's say, like you had like a precise profile of a deal that you would offer to them, I presume. Was that the case?
Right. So the template was, it was kind of the standard syndication model, because at the time I didn't know any better. We hadn't closed a deal before. So we're looking at the 5-year burn and turn, kind of a quick, a flip, so to say, of a multifamily deal. You buy in, you get, I think it was an 8% pref we were talking about at the time, and you'll double your money in 5 years. And that was honestly what all these folks were really interested in. And I was like, this is what I thought we would be able to achieve based on what I had been going over and reviewing, and all these other deals we had been looking at over the last 2 years, submitting LOIs on. That was kind of like the target we were going for, is a 70-30 equity split, 8% pref, 5-year turnaround, some kind of liquidity event in year 2 or year 3 through some kind of refinance, whether it was 100% capital out or just 70-80%, something like that. And all these investors were extremely interested.
To what extent you believe, let's say, because I mean, these are soft commits, and it was kind of a hypothetical scenario, right? So there isn't a real deal going on. To what extent, how much of that you think would have converted to actual investors?
Well, we had that deal afterwards, and
Yeah.
so 650 at least converted. And then after that, it was after like the time went on, because of course they're all soft committing in July of 2020. So as time continued to go on, we didn't get our next deal and start raising for it until January of 2021, roughly about 6 months later. So at that point, these investors had since taken the money that they said they had and put it in another deal, or they were starting to get a little worried about what was happening with the election at the time. They're like, hey, if Joe Biden gets elected, I'm not investing. Like, okay, we'll see what happens with that. And then just all these different things happening throughout the course of time. And hey, maybe they're not interested anymore, or hey, maybe I didn't ask specific enough questions where we're having these conversations about investing, but I wasn't asking about specific markets. So suddenly I bring them a deal in a specific market, and they say, hey, sorry, I'm not interested in that market, only interested in primary, secondary markets with such and such class assets, such and such amount of units. I'm like, wow, I guess I should have been a little bit more detailed on the questions that I asked up front. And so the actual conversion, it really was just 650. I mean, I guess it was a little more after that, because when we went to the next deal, I wasn't able to raise the full amount. The next deal we were raising for was 550,000, and I raised about 250, 300,000 for that deal. So that investor that actually had the $3 million was not able to invest with us, because he was like, well, I already invested in another deal, and I'm no longer liquid. I'm like, oh, great. So basically it was kind of a timing thing at that point. They were interested in me and my company, my business, what I was about, who I was, and they were interested in the model of deal that I was kind of pitching, that of course was fake at the time. But then I wouldn't actually go to these investors to raise the capital unless I had a deal that met the criteria we already talked about. I mean, if it was just like slightly off, like maybe a 7% pref or, something along those lines, but they're still doubling their money, then of course I'd still go to them. But if we couldn't offer any pref and they were only going to get like a 1.8 equity multiple, then it's like, I'm not even gonna go to those guys, because they're probably not going to be interested. We've already had these conversations prior, and they've already told me, like, we had detailed conversations. I don't want to waste anyone's time.
And that generic kind of template of a deal, was it, it didn't specify a market, like that's what you're saying. There wasn't even a market there. It was kind of a general, just the
Some of, yeah. So I didn't specify a market.
Okay.
Some of them did. They were like, yeah, I've been investing in the Midwest or in the Southeast, and that would be potentially where I'm interested in the future. But, you know, let me know when you find something. And I was like, yeah, we'd probably be somewhere in the Gulf Coast, somewhere in the Southeast. And most of them, or really all of them, said, yeah, I like the Southeast. Let me know when you get anything. But then when I specified, when we got our first deal, like, hey, it's in Alabama, they were like, well, I don't know if I like Alabama. Or I said, hey, it's in a little town called Citronelle, and it was a little bit more tertiary than most. And they're like, I don't want to invest in the tertiary market. And so that's where I maybe should have gotten just a little bit more specific.
Which is quite interesting. That it's kind of like a test for the investor market, where you basically give them, there isn't even a specific deal, there isn't a market, and they're still ready for it, sounds like. So that is quite interesting. I mean, a question that we got on the chat is actually, how do you lock down investors without a deal in place? Well, it was a capital raising challenge, right? There is no like locking down per se.
Yeah, so I think that's one thing I really liked about the challenge. I think that's one thing that really allowed me to get to where I was the fact that it was like, I have an excuse basically to go out there, talk to these investors, and potentially try to raise this money, because some people that were in the challenge actually had a deal that they were raising for. But of course, there were others like myself that didn't and hadn't closed a deal before and just wanted to learn about how to raise money. And so it was just the concept of getting out there and having the challenge as an excuse to have these conversations, because these folks are reaching out to me because of the videos I'm making. And then, so they already know I'm in the challenge. Every video was like, you know, day 13 of 30 of 500K. And, you know, here's what we're talking about today and blah, 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 whatever. Here's what I learned. Here's, you know, the video that they would watch. And so they knew that this was a capital raising challenge. So we're getting on the phone to talk about our personal lives, and I want to get to know them and they want to get to know me on a personal level. But in the back of all of our minds, we knew that we were getting on the phone because there was this capital raising challenge piece to this conversation. And so more often than not, they actually brought up the concept of investing in the conversation before I did, because they were intrigued with me and wanted to get on the phone with me to talk about it.
So, Josh, this is Nelson here. Can you hear me, by the way?
Yeah, I got you.
Okay. Am I coming in loud and clear?
I can hear you.
Okay, great. Yeah, I've got a new headset and I'm traveling overseas. Josh, kind of a three-part question. First of all, this is amazing that this thing, and Stefan, I don't know where Stefan finds people. He drags them out about, I don't know where, but this is just another great guest. I wanted to ask you first about the challenge itself. It's $100 challenge, you know, kind of more a little bit about that. Then you did Facebook Lives or vlogs. And then how did you maintain the relationship with folks? Because there were all these people. I mean, if you're talking to at least 30, 40, you said like from 30 people, you raised 600,000. So there was another 550,000, which could be one person, it could be, you know, X number. How did you maintain the relationship? How did you grow that? You know, continue kind of specifics, the blogs, even though I know you've gone into it, and then first the specifics more of the challenge. Kind of like
so the challenge.
So I did it in reverse order, checklist, like all good pilots go. Okay.
So the challenge is called 30 Days to 500K by a guy named Bill Allen. I'm sure he's probably still running the challenge. Maybe he's not, I don't know, but you can find it on his web. You probably just search Bill Allen. You can find it somewhere, or you can search 30 Day to 500K, $100 to get into it whenever he actually launches it. I don't know if he launches it once a quarter or what, but all the information should be there wherever you find his website. Now, the keeping in touch with investors, continuing to nurture those relationships, that came. So of course I added all these individuals onto my non-existing CRM at the time. At the time, all I had, because I didn't have a CRM because I didn't have any investors. It was just me and my business partner. So I added them all to an Excel spreadsheet and was kind of tracking and had all my notes in the Excel spreadsheet next to their name and the, city and blah, 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 phone number, notes we talked about, the goals that they have, all that kind of stuff. And then when I realized that wasn't sustainable, this was going to take too much time to keep up with this and to try to continue to communicate with these people, I then got a CRM, which I started out with MailChimp, which is free, which is one reason I started out with it. But then MailChimp wasn't really doing for me what I needed it to do. So then I went to Activecampaign, which is what I still use today, which has been fantastic. There's so many different detailed intricacies that don't even make sense to me. I had to hire some marketing guy to set it all up for me. But basically, I got these names in a CRM. And then once they were there, I was starting to build out different little systems inside my business, plus things I was already doing. So they're now all on my list, right? They're all on this list, and they're getting, basically it's like an email list. So once a month at the time, I was submitting and sending out these newsletters. So once a month I was creating a newsletter. They were getting to see that. That wasn't really me talking to that specific individual, but they were getting to see my name. They were getting to see my face. They were getting to see what the company was doing, what I'm doing, what we're about, goals we have. And then on top of that, then I also had the podcast. So obviously can't like forcibly subscribe these people, but in the newsletters, they get to see that I have a podcast, and a lot of them ended up subscribing to it, listening to it. So on a weekly basis, now they're not just monthly, but weekly, they're getting to hear me and listen to me and see what I'm doing and hear these guests we're bringing on and new things I'm learning. And they're also getting to learn as well, and kind of all growing together in that aspect. Then on top of that, even when I didn't have a deal come out, I would try to communicate with these people maybe once a quarter. So once every 3 months, I would try to
on the phone.
Right. I would try to talk to every single one of them. And of course, at the time, I only had like 50, 60 people on this list. So it was much more sustainable. Now I don't do that because I have 1,000+ people on the list, and it's just not possible. But what we've added since then is we've added, of course, the ability for folks to schedule a call with me should they have any questions or want to chat or anything like that. Also, I've gotten a lot more involved on social media, which, believe it or not, I feel like has been pivot. I mean, obviously, social media is the only way I raised the $6 million in 30 days in the first place, by going live on Facebook. But then on top of that, after that, the ability to post once a day or every other day and have all these people that found me on social media in the first place continue to see my posts, see what we're doing, stay up to date on that. So it's like they're staying up to date daily from social media. They're staying up to date weekly from podcasts. They're staying up to date monthly with newsletters. And then almost every month or every other month, we're at a point now where we have a new deal come about. So then they get emails about new investment opportunities. And so that is really the best way that I was able to stay in touch with these people and try to stay top of mind. And I had to learn a lot of these things from this marketing guy that I actually hired, because I, like you, didn't know anything about anything. And when I hired him, he was like, here's what you need to do. You need to have multiple different touch points. You need to have calls to action and inside these touch points. And then you need to set, and then now when folks schedule a call with me, I have a whole bunch of like back end, I don't even know what you call it, but they get like they get set up to an automatic email over here, and they get like a 3 email welcome packet of learning more about the company. They get to see our vivid vision now, which is exactly where we look to head over the next 3 years, what our goals are, what assets are that we're looking to hit, what the company culture is going to be like. They get to see videos about me describing the vivid vision. They get to basically, I had to start creating all these different things, which is all part of the marketing, so that I could be more present with these people without actually needing to spend day in and day out communicating with them. And this whole marketing back end piece is really what has allowed me, I think, today to be able to continue to grow the investor network and database, and continue to actually have fairly close relationships with these people, because more often than not, before someone actually invests with you, they usually want, like, because now we're at the point where folks are listening to the podcast and they jump on the portal or they jump on this and they want to have a phone call with me. And like, before we even talk about my first and last name, they're wanting to like throw 50K at me. So now it's at the point where I make it a point to have these detailed conversations with people. Make sure I get to know who they are, what their goals are. Hey, where's this money coming from? Like you're thinking about giving me 50K. You know, hey, if a tree fell on your house tomorrow, are you going to be asking me for this money back? Like, is this coming from emergency savings? We need to make sure we're all on the same page here, and that this is money that you're fully prepared to lose, basically. Like, obviously that's not what anybody wants, and that's not what I'm trying to do. But if it happens, are you going to be in a world of pain and you're going to be upset with me? And you know, what is that going to look like? So I know that was a long roundabout way of saying it, but basically a CRM.
Okay. No, but it was important to understand the marketing funnel, you know, because after 50, 60 people, it becomes kind of tough. And on the vlogs, it was just, and I know you talked about it, but it's just basically, hey, this is Joshua Ferrari, excuse me. This is what's taking place today.
I mean, they were random, dude. I'm talking about, like I said, the whole hot and sweaty one where it was 90 degrees, our AC had broken and it was the heat of the summer. And then the COVID one. And then I had another one where the dog took a dump on the ground. And I was like, really, like, check this out. Has anyone else struggling with this? Dog been potty trained time and time again, and they're still taking a dump inside. And it was videos about us going to the movies. It was videos about us going out on a date. It was it was a lot more. And then it was also videos, because at the time we were actually living in the fourplex and still renovating the fourplex. So also I was like in the fourplex saying, hey, here's this unit. Here's what we're doing to this unit. Here's what we've already done to it, or what it's looked like before. Here's where we expect to kind of go with it. Here's how I'm struggling right now. Here's our financial struggle, and the bank keeps saying that they're not going to give us the money because this particular work over here is not done, or it's not done up to standard, and 203K FHA loan sucks. I don't recommend it to anyone. And it was kind of just really what was happening to me at that specific day. I never actually sat down and thought, what am I going to talk about? Let me build out a script. Let me figure out what I'm going to say and then do the video. It was just like, hey, I got to do a video today. I'm just going to do the video. We're just going to start it, and whatever comes top of mind, that's what we're going to talk about. And I think
live.
Right. I think that my ability to make what was happening to me be relatable to people is what kind of made that conversion happen and made people actually want to talk to me.
And then, so you did the Facebook Live. I'm just trying to timeline this way. So Joshua Ferrari does the Facebook Live, and 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 days to it. Are you getting DMs? Are you closing it by saying, if you have any other questions, feel free to reach out to me on, DM me on Facebook. How is that working out?
Right, exactly. So feel free to comment on this if you have any questions, or DM me, or hey, here's my email, here's my phone number. Like, I was hungry for folks to be reaching out to me. So I was trying to give them as many contact points as possible. And then I was trying to be on my phone basically all the time. Like, hey, someone message me, let's make sure we chat with them as quickly as possible, which obviously isn't sustainable for everyone. But at the time, I just so happened to be available due to COVID. I was furloughed from my job, and I was able to go full time in the business for like 3 to 4 months before the monthly stipend in, and I had to go back to work. But it just happened to land perfectly in this time when he started the challenge, that I was able to be very heavily involved in the business and consistently communicating with people. So I was able to be on the phone all day and do these videos and comment literally on everyone's comment. That's another thing I didn't mention. Even when people start commenting on it, no matter what they say, they're like, this is awesome, congrats, thanks for the info, like, you're doing a great job. I made it a point at that time to go back and re-comment on every single person's comment who commented on my post. And then I took it a step further, and I went on everyone else's post who was in the challenge. Folks that commented on their posts, I would comment on, not on every single person's post on someone else's, but I would say, if someone else posted, I'd be like, hey, you're doing great, or glad we're in this together, or, whatever it was, I would make sure that I'm commenting on that person's post so that other people that are following them in their challenge then see that I'm in the challenge. And then more often than not, they then started following me. So I was just trying to be as involved and try to satisfy all the algorithms of Facebook by commenting and liking and doing all these other things so that I would be as visible as possible to the biggest audience I could be.
Mm-hmm. And now, if you had to do this over again right now, the Joshua Ferrari of today, what would you do different?
Oh, geez. If I had to do it over today, I didn't start asking for referrals until day 12, because day 12 is when he told us to ask for referrals. And I'm like, shoot, I've been talking to folks for the last week and I haven't asked anybody. So I would definitely start day one asking for referrals. I would probably have built out the CRM that I have now a little bit better before jumping into it so that I can stay on top of staying in touch with these people, scheduling these calls. That was another thing. I didn't have any like scheduling things set up. Now I use Calendly and I can just send folks links and they can quickly see when I'm available. But at the time, it was like, hey, someone DMs me and I'm having to take the time to look at my calendar. They look at their calendar and we're kind of like wasting time sending messages back and forth. Like, hey, how does 2:00 p.m. Central Standard Time at this day work for you? And they're like, yeah, it doesn't work for me. Maybe 3:00 work. So we're just like wasting time. So I would have set up some kind of scheduling thing. So it's a lot easier for us to quickly communicate and get on the phone together. I probably today I'd have a lot more to talk about. So back then I was just talking about my personal journey, my personal life, and then what was happening in the fourplex, but I'd never actually closed a multifamily deal. So here I am trying to raise money for a multifamily deal, and I've never closed one before. So today I think I might have a little bit more success being like, hey, we've done, over $35 million assets under management. We've done a lot of deals up to this point, and here's kind of a track record of what we've been able to gain or acquire, and here's how these deals have panned out. I might even have some investor referrals for these particular investors. I did have some investors during that ask me for referrals, and I was like, hey, I'm a new guy, new to this business. I don't know how long you've been following my videos, but I have never actually closed a deal like this before. I've never raised money before. So I don't actually have a referral to give to you. However, my business partner has raised money before. And so if you'd like to see who I'm partnered with and what that looks like, I can refer you over to one of his investors. And some of them wanted to do that. Others didn't. They were like, no, don't worry about it. But now that we've raised probably about $10-11 million up to this point, I would be able to actually be like, hey, here's some investors that have invested with us before. Here's a deal that's gone full cycle. Here I probably have them actually already go ahead and write me a referral. Some of them even actually created videos for me that I have where they're like, hey, my name is so-and-so. I've invested with so-and-so with Ferrari Capital, Josh Ferrari, and here's been the experience. And he was like, I've been in the business for the last 15 years. I've seen a lot of different investors. I've seen this and seen that. And he operates with the utmost integrity, the utmost communication. Anytime I have a question, he's quickly on the phone with me. Even though he didn't have a lot of experience when I first started investing with him, that really wasn't a problem for me because I was looking for integrity, honesty, and someone that would pick up the phone and actually be communicative with me. And so that was a video that he created to help me as like a referral, basically. So then if anyone had questions about referrals, I could shoot them an email or a text message with the video. And they're like, sweet. Like, glad that this guy had a great experience with you and seems like you know what you're doing. And then, of course, being able to see the other actual examples of deals that we've done, I think would help now.
So that's really awesome. If I may just interject, we have like a question on the chat like by Sonia. So did you take a formal mentoring course after reading Joe Fairley's book? And how did you find your partners?
Okay, I'm sorry. What was that?
Did you take a formal mentoring course after reading Joe Fairley's book? And how did you find your partners?
So I read Joe Fairless's book and did not take a formal mentoring course because I was dirt broke. Again, I lost $60,000 in this deal, or I was in the process of losing $60,000. I was probably 22 at the time and just didn't have any money. I would have loved to spend $20,000, $30,000 and been able to rapidly accelerate where I am today. But I had to go the long, hard, painful way of just hustling and grinding and spending a lot of time because I didn't have any money. So my mentor that I got, the organic mentor I got from that particular meetup, it was literally just me going to that meetup and then having the gumption to go up to him afterwards and ask him what, basically just talk to him and then ask him if he could help kind of guide me along the path. And if he would allow me to take him out to lunch that following week. Now, when I say he's my mentor, he actually wasn't a mentor in terms of he didn't introduce me to investors. He didn't let me do deals with him. He didn't give me deals. He didn't introduce me to brokers. He didn't consistently call me every day and push me to be better. He literally didn't do any of that. Because I didn't pay him. Again, this was organic. So it was like a free just relationship. So because of that, he wasn't going to spend any of his extra time to do any of that for me. So basically what he was kind of a Q&A mentor, where if I ever had any question at all about where I was or what I needed to do, I needed a little bit of guidance. I just was kind of stuck on something like, how do you get a broker to take you serious? This is killing me. I would be able to call him up and he would tell me what he did in order to get to that point. And then he would give me a little guidance on what he felt like I needed to do based on my personal experience. So for me, it was strictly organic in terms of mentorship. And then how I actually found my partners is interesting because, or at least I find it interesting, because I had this organic mentor. And then this is roughly about a year into trying to get into the multifamily space and analyzing a bunch of deals and doing all this stuff. I'm networking with folks, going to the meetups on Bigger Pockets, listening to the podcasts, started my podcast, doing all these things. And a guy actually reached out to me on Bigger Pockets. And the only reason I find it funny is because he lives in Gulf Shores. I live in Mobile, Alabama. We're literally like 45 minutes away from each other. And he found me on an international website. I just find that a little bit funny, but I'm glad I was on there, glad I was being kind of present and active on there. He saw that I was local, reached out to me, wanted to grab some coffee. I hate coffee, but everyone else likes coffee. So I said, yeah, let's go get some coffee. Show up at a coffee shop and started to quickly realize that we had a lot of things in common. Immediately he walks in and I see that he's kind of a big jack dude. And I'm like, oh man, this guy loves working out. I love physical fitness. And then we start talking, find out he's been playing bass guitar in a rock band for the last like 10 years. I'm like, dude, heavy metal is my absolute favorite genre. And I've been a drummer for the last 15 years. Like we need to jam together, if nothing else. Then I find out he's been in the single family industry for the last 10 years, looking to transition out, sell his portfolio and get into multifamily. And it just kind of clicked. And believe it or not, as much as it sounded like this conversation went perfectly, I left that meetup not thinking that we were going to be partners at all, like literally. And so I then, it wasn't actually until 2 months later that an actual deal came about. And then that was when I reached out to him because I remembered a conversation that we had and was like, hey, would you be interested in potentially partnering with me on this deal? I remember our conversation. He was like, yeah, sure, let's do it. Of course, that deal ended up falling through. We didn't end up closing that one, but that was kind of the beginning of our partnership. And the second guy we met on our second deal. We actually weren't able to raise all of the capital for that deal, just us two. And so my mentor actually introduced me to him because he had helped him raise money before on some of his deals. Found out he was a prior Air Force fighter pilot. And so me being in aviation as well, we immediately clicked. And we kind of had all the same goals, the same vision, similar personalities in terms of kind of like sense of humor. And we all kind of got along very well. And before you know it, we were a trio.
That's really great. And that's a question from Bradley on the chat. Actually, how are you dealing with like SEC and making sure they're qualified investors? And also, what NET are you using? I think there's a typo there. So basically, how are you dealing with SEC and making sure they're qualified investors?
So all of the deals that we've done have been 506B Reg D offerings. And the way I differentiate B and C is kind of like commercial, your advertising, they have to be accredited. B, I usually associate with the word buddy. So with 506B Reg D offering, you have to have a pre-existing relationship with these people, roughly about 2 to 3 touches. It's kind of a lot of gray area there, but I like to make sure that I'm documenting how many touches we're having with these people before they actually give me money. And so I never really had to actually go about figuring out what their accreditation level was, because they could be sophisticated. And we haven't had a deal yet to where because with 506B offering, you can only have up to 35 sophisticated investors, but you can have unlimited credit. And I haven't gotten up to the point yet where where we have 35 sophisticated investors investing with us. Most of them have typically been accredited. And I guess the question of how do you actually determine that they're accredited would be, there's a lot of different third-party softwares out there that you can help determine that. They usually charge some kind of nominal fee. The person inputs their information, or you input their information, and it kind of background checks their financials, and that's how you could accredit them.
And how do you go about finding deals, and where is the next question we have?
How do we go about finding deals? Honestly, all the deals we found up to this point have been through relationships. We never actually did, or we haven't done any direct to seller marketing at all. It's all been strictly just, I guess, a word of mouth, folks knowing the type of markets that we're interested in. Also broker relations. Broker relations have been a big thing. So once we kind of closed that first deal with that one broker, then it kind of became this snowball effect, or really an avalanche effect, of them realizing that we're closers and that we're serious. And then, people talk. It's a small business. So then now other brokers, of course, we posted, we closed the deal. Now other brokers are starting to see that on our social media, and they're starting to reach out because they've got opportunities in the same markets or the same asset classes. And before you know it, we had deal after deal. Before we actually closed the first one, we had the next one under contract. And then before we closed that one, we had another one under contract. And we've been at one point where we had 2 under contract while one was going. And it's just been kind of like this crazy evolution of just, I guess, an avalanche of having closed the first one, being seen as a closer, as a professional, as someone who's active in the space, being taken seriously. And then brokers at that point really just want to know you, because they want to close deals just as much as you want to close deals, because they don't get paid unless deals are closing.
Mm-hmm. And just a quick question: if we're talking about deal closings, what's your average deal size? Units press per door kind of thing.
So
range, rather, maybe even range.
Yeah. So the smallest deal we've ever closed is 34 units. And the largest deal we've closed up to this point has been 148 units. And we actually just got a 208 unit under contract today. So we're very different in our unit count. And it really depends on the specific area. Like the 34 unit is in our backyard. 5 minutes up the road, I can drive to that property and I know everything that's happening. And that's actually been one of our better performing assets. So if we were looking at a 34 unit in another state or another city that we weren't boots on the ground on, it would be a lot more difficult to do management and property and kind of be there and be present. Right. So we would want the deal to be much larger so that we can have on-site staff and things like that. So all the deals we've closed that have been larger have been either in the market that we're in, or like the 208 unit we just got is like 5 hours away from us. But we're only okay with it because the deal's large enough to have on-site staff. Right.
And then is one of your partners, and I don't know if you're sponsoring these deals? Do you have one of the partners is an ability to sponsor, or is that outsourced somehow?
In the beginning, the third partner we brought on was able to be the KP, the key principal partner, and he was able to kind of meet that net worth and liquidity requirements for those first few deals that we were doing. Then actually the third deal we ever closed was the 148 unit portfolio. And so that deal being the biggest deal we had done up until that point, we had to bring on another key principal partner to basically sign on the dotted loan and be kind of like an advisor in that role.
Mm-hmm. And then the key big question I think everybody wants to know, are you still in that fourplex? What's going on with that?
No, the fourplex got sold in January of 21, and that was when I was able to finalize all the books and realize I had lost 60K.
Okay.
So just since I know, Josh, you probably have to go take care of your baby as well. And we're kind of going over time, but we have like several more questions. I just wanted to go over a bit quickly. So question from Kathy, did you have a bar to exclude people who were not qualified investors, or was there a different track for them to participate?
Can you say that question one more time?
So did you have a bar to exclude people who are not qualified as investors? I mean, we're in the non-accredited investor space, obviously, but do you have like criteria or bar to exclude not qualified investors, or was there a different track for them to participate?
Well, again, the 506B, you're allowed to bring on sophisticated investors. So sophisticated investor, it could really literally be anyone. It's anyone that has the actual capacity or the financial capacity to invest in a deal and understands this is the deal that they're getting in. So really, if they're sophisticated, the only criteria at that point is that we've had 2 to 3 touches, so we meet SEC requirements, and then that you feel comfortable in investing with me and that you have the financial capacity to invest the bare minimum, which the minimum we had back then is 25K. And at this point, it's probably 50 to 75K.
Okay. Okay. So do you guys have any other questions actually? Before we wrap up, we have a little bit more time. If you guys want to speak up, Nelson had a few questions, but if anyone else wants to, we took some on the chat as well. Yeah. So how can we reach to Josh? Yeah. What is the best way to reach to you?
So you can go to ferraricapital.com and there's a section there to schedule a call with me, or you scroll all the way down. All of my social media links are there to stay up to date with us. LinkedIn and Facebook are probably the 2 best platforms to go to stay up to date from that regard. Also, if you would like to get on our investor list, or if you would like to learn more about who we are and what we do in our portfolio, that website actually has a lot of information on there. And then of course I have a podcast myself, Creative Capital. It's also on the website, or you can just go to Apple iTunes or wherever you listen to podcasts and type in Creative Capital. We release 2 episodes a week. And yeah, I would say those are probably the best ways.
Awesome. That was really great. So thanks, Josh, for going over your experience and your, just everything you had to share with us today. I learned a lot myself, and I'm sure others did as well. And thank you for answering all questions. Well, one last question we just got. So what is your current pref? 7 or 8?
Current pref is actually 10%.
10%. Awesome. That's great. Cool. Okay. So with that, you guys know how to reach Josh. This video is going to be on YouTube. Thank you for joining us here today. And thanks, Josh. Appreciate it.
Thanks so much for having me.